On today's Newsa-Cast, we have wrestling guru Dan Scharenbrock. Tosh and I forget and forgot, and we take an old look at new. And we always do our Red Smith Banquet Throwback. This week we have the legendary UW marching band leader, Michael Leckrone. So what do you say? Let's get on with the show.
Yeah, once you get sucked into that wrestling, you kind of stay in it.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast. What is a Newsa-Cast? It's where we bring local folk stories to life through conversation.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to another episode of our favorite podcast and hopefully becoming one of your favorite podcasts, the Newsa-Cast. And we got a great episode. We're going to learn all about wrestling, not only wrestling from the standpoint of a wrestler, but from the standpoint of a coach, a parent, a ref, as we get to interview Dan Scharenbrock. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, my gosh, it absolutely was. You know, we started as a lacrosse podcast. We've now morphed into a wrestling podcast. No, it's all good. It's one of those great, you're absolutely right. Who knew that this guy lived in our neighborhood, just an incredible man, mentor to so many. You know, without him, wrestling isn't what you see now. So super excited. That's really the reason, Tosh, you and I do this for conversations like that. So I loved it.
It's just telling somebody's story, right?
That's right.
And if you didn't know Dan, you're gonna get to hear his story, and it's cool all the way from Ladysmith, right outside Ladysmith, Wisconsin, Flambeau High School. So yeah, you get to hear a little bit about his journey through the wrestling world as well.
No, absolutely. And like you said, Tosh, we like to tell stories. Do you have any stories to tell me from your past week?
I don't have any huge stories. Nothing major's happened, just watching my ice rink turn into a duck pond again.
Yes.
That's pretty much the bummer right now as far as my sons are concerned. And, I'm sure at some point we'll be able to get back out there and get on the ice rink again. But right now it's with the weather the way it is, not very good for ice skating. And what I'm worried about is once in a while I like to get out and do some ice fishing. Well, that's not happening anytime soon. And the bigger thing is the sturgeon spearing in a couple weeks. That's really looking iffy.
Damn you, El Nino, kicking our you-know-what.
That's not good. It's not good situation right now. So hopefully those winter sports enthusiasts get a little bit of a cold streak here and we maybe get some snow and some ice for them. Yeah. How about yourself, Joe?
Yeah, I had a good week, Tosh. I actually had an enjoyable week. I probably shouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did, but saw another epic show down at Poplar Hall, Yonder Mountain String Band. Still just continued to be amazed at the bands that are playing there. I just blows my mind. I mean, they were just a great show with a great group of people. We had a lot of fun, and man, we listened to some good music and caught a Badger game. Was down in Madison. One of the things we actually talked to Dan about is he officiated in the Kohl Center some of the state wrestling tournaments, and I happened to be down there for the Badger Michigan State game, and that atmosphere was epic as well. And got a little burger at the Nitty Gritty. Tosh had a good old time that night.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. It's good to hear. Yeah, Madison's a fun town. Definitely a fun town.
Absolutely.
Lots of memories, for sure.
Lots of memories indeed. And, I don't know. Speaking of memories, Tosh, why don't we keep the show going and maybe take an old look at new?
We are ready to take kind of a fun, it's turned into a very fun segment, and that's the old look at new, where we take a little look at history. And Joe does a great job, and I'm probably jinxing it now. Just looking at the world right here in Northeast Wisconsin, where I tend to wander around the world, take a little walkabout. But Joe, what's your old look at new this week?
Well, Tosh, I hope to continue what you just said about me. For a while, I spent a lot of time in this segment on the Fox River, and we're going to go back to the Fox River. I think this is something that most people know if you're an Appletonian, but it's certainly worth repeating that this was the first hydroelectric plant was right here in Appleton, Wisconsin. In 1882, that first plant using water-powered, generated, using the water, the Fox River, to generate electricity that was built right here on the rapids of the Fox River. In fact, that little building is right down by on Law Street, and I actually toured that building last summer. It was a cool little 30-minute guy sits there and talks, tells you about how everything worked. It was actually kind of cool. And that electricity back in 1882 was not only used for the first commercial electric lighting system. It lights the house that you see on Richmond Street or on Memorial Drive and Prospect. But that also operated a streetcar line, which, man, I love that. I wish we still had streetcars, Tosh. But anyway, that's something to hang our hat on. Yeah,
that's fun because, I think every elementary school kid in the city gets to go to the Hearthstone and check out the building and learn a little bit about that side of Appleton as well.
No, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's the Fox River. It's one of the cool things I think about the Fox River in our lifetime, and I think about it every time I go to Poplar Hall. It's that river is powerful. It's got a lot of history. It was even before we were the United States, the fur trade. That was being used, and it's that's pretty cool. So we should embrace what we have. But how about you, Tash? What's your old look at new?
Well, I'm going to January 27th, 1967, and this takes a little closer look at NASA and the Apollo missions, and that was the date of the tragedy of the Apollo 1 fire, where Virgil Grissom, Edward White, Roger Chaffee, they lost their lives in the flash fire aboard their spacecraft while doing a ground testing. And it was 2 years before we actually put men on the moon, so we were doing all that testing, and that was the Apollo 1 fire. So great tragedy, but these men lost their lives, and it's pretty crazy when you look at the Apollo missions, right. And these guys, I mean, putting men in space and trying to land on the moon and not really knowing, we had computers guiding these spacecrafts that were less powerful than our phones in our pockets, which is absolutely incredible.
Oh, that's just nuts. Yeah, I mean, that happened before we were born, but I certainly remember my dad telling me about it. I know there's footage of it, and for any of you Jim Rome fans out there, that Evel Knievel interview, you'll know exactly what the Gus Grissom or reference is. I always think about that as well. But I mean, it's unfortunately in space. I mean, we've seen it with the space shuttle. It takes tragedy to move forward. It's not easy working with rocket science, right, Tash?
No, it's not. Definitely not. So, that's my look. Little look at tragedy. I got off the sports contracts for a couple. I was on for a couple weeks.
Let's get right into tragedy.
There we go. So
no, it's a good one.
That was my old look at new.
No, I love it, Tash. It's a fun segment. So I hope you enjoyed it, folks.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to another episode of our podcast, and we are very excited to have the one and only Dan Scharenbrock with us. And Dan, for wrestlers, and for a lot of you, you may know Dan from his coaching at Appleton East, or even his reffing that he's done, or possibly through his son, Zach, who is also a wrestler at Appleton East and in the area. He has a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to dive into a little bit about his wrestling and his journey through the sport as well. So welcome to Newsa-Cast, Dan.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, Dan, I guess the big thing is just thinking back to your childhood. What got you into wrestling?
Well, probably got started because my older brother started wrestling when he was in high school. And so wrestling is very family orientated. So once you get one trapped into it, kind of brings the others along.
There's a lot of truth in that, isn't there? There's a lot of just famous families that have had, a dozen kids. That same family just keeps wrestling. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. It's I mean, we can go back and through families, I know from my high school the same thing. There were the Gundersons, the Scharenbrocks, the Ketterings, and then and it's the same in most of these schools. It's not like it used to be because the size of the families are a lot smaller. But I know in my family, I've had my brothers both had kids that were wrestlers, and one is now an official. He's out of Wrightstown. He's doing a very good job. I just worked with him this weekend at the Pulaski tournament. It was his first time there,
Nice.
and he did a bang-up job. I have a brother in Sun Prairie, and two of his boys were both multiple-time state champs, and they wrestled at Wisconsin. They're done now, but so that family tradition thing is really huge in the sport of wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. And you grew up in Eau Claire? Is that where you did your high school wrestling?
I was north of Eau Claire in a little high school called Flambeau High School, just east of Ladysmith, Wisconsin.
Okay.
When you wrestled, wrestling at high school in a smaller school like that, were there a lot? Did you have a lot of wrestlers with you? Was it a pretty big sport at the time?
Well, when I first started, it was pretty big. We had very full teams. We were carrying probably 30 kids on our team.
Wow.
I remember my freshman year, I think we had 11 seniors on varsity and 2 freshmen.
Wow.
So yeah, those small schools are struggling to keep full teams now. That's obvious, but I think a lot of it goes back to the families and not having 3 brothers on the team with you. There were 4 boys in my family, so it was just a natural thing to follow one after another.
Sure. What I've often wondered about wrestling, why is it certain schools like Kaukauna, Wrightstown, Freedom, they always just seem to have that traditional, that they're a wrestling school. What makes that? Mm-hmm. And not every school has that.
No, not at all. Your coaching staff is huge. Jeff Machek has been there at Kaukauna for years and years. The Verbatens at Wrightstown, Mike Beekler and Brad Baker out at Freedom. They've all been involved in those programs for years now.
Sure.
I think that's probably the biggest key. And then you have the families that just keep generating more and more wrestlers. There's, the Verbatens out at Wrightstown, they have kids and cousins that are wrestling right now and nephews. And that it just carries on through.
Would you say, is the sport growing or did it have a heyday? Is it trying to catch up again? What is the status of wrestling?
Well, right now we've introduced girls wrestling to the state of Wisconsin. And that is growing leaps and bounds.
Nice.
I think you're going to see more and more. It's a great thing for the sport. It's great for the girls. They're now at the boys' state tournament along with us. It's a very exciting time. The girls part of it. The boys, I think because the family size has decreased, that a lot of programs have struggled because of that. You are seeing a lot of new people come in, but again, it's like all sports. There's been a specialization in it.
Yeah.
And a lot of these kids are wrestling clubs besides their high school teams.
Sure.
Okay.
It's amazing isn't it now, how sports are. It's nothing like it was when we grew up. At every one of these sports you can play year round, and they all seem to have clubs attached to the sport.
Right. I remember the days, of high school where you did 3 sports.
Right.
Those days aren't. That's not the norm anymore. Where kids are doing 2 or 3. I don't think.
Right.
So, whether it's good or it's bad, I got feelings both ways. It is what it is.
You know, I feel the same way. And one of the interesting things that Tosh and I have discovered in doing this podcast, we asked that question to a lot of the athletes that we've had as guests and as interviews, and every single one of them have answered the question is they did play multiple sports, you know, the 3 sports. And him and I have commented that that's refreshing to hear that, you know, the Matty Wanamaker played 3 sports, that kind of thing. That was really cool to hear.
Yes, that it is. Yeah, I listened to Maddie's podcast, and having worked with her dad, it was really cool to hear that. And I've listened to I think it was Roger
Hornberger. Roger
Hornberger on lacrosse. Yeah, so I heard some of those same ideas come across. You know, the multiple sports, which I think is huge. You think about the training now. And the repetition of using those same motions over and over, I think we're starting to see kids, you know, young adults now with the problems I didn't have until I was 40, 50, when my shoulders started going and my hips started going and knees and all that. Now it's happening earlier. I had one of my nephews that was at Wisconsin. He had hip surgery his first year.
Wow.
You know, so it was, but, you know, he's been wrestling since he was, you know, able to stand up and training, you know, nonstop in the club. So, yeah, I think from that point of view, the specialization has put our bodies on notice, you know, sort of, it's just... Yeah, that wear and tear, and I'm sure
so much pounding.
Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be happening in baseball and softball too. Their shoulders, and their elbows and things. So
yeah, you hear these kids getting Tommy John surgery at 16 years old. I mean, are you kidding?
Yeah,
and that was unheard of 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
I have to think about how old I am before I say this.
What other sports did you play growing up?
Well, I played baseball and football, and then in junior year in high school, they talked me into going out for track instead of baseball. Well, I was playing baseball again my senior year, so not that track is bad. The nephew that I mentioned, who's an official out of Wrightstown, he was a fantastic cross-country runner and distance runner, so I'm qualified for state multiple times, and you know, so yeah, it just wasn't my thing.
So what was, besides having older brothers, what was something that drew you into wrestling? What did you flat out love about it?
I love the contact of it. It's one-on-one. You screw up, everybody knows you screw up, you got to find your way out of it. And, so that part of it was very intriguing for me. It forced me to become much more determined. Self-control was a huge thing, I think, that helped develop. So I guess that was probably my biggest factor. Was it was individual, but yet there's a team component to it as well.
Is there? I have always, both my boys played the respective sports, and they were never going to be professional. They weren't even going to play the sport in college, but I always wanted them to take something out of sports, and we all know the value of what we get out of the sports, overcoming failure and things like that you just learn by playing sports. Can you look back on life and are you always taking your lessons that you learn playing sports and just applying it every day in life?
I all the time. When it gets tough, you just bear down and you go through things. I even think about that, with my teaching. I taught chemistry for a lot of years, and it wasn't the easiest class by any extreme, but if I could get the students to work and stay after it, and that was the hardest thing, is they would try and then they would give up. And if you can just continue to struggle through it, all of a sudden that light bulb goes on. And I attribute that to wrestling in particular, because, it's a hard sport. It's physical, and I always said, and Eric probably has heard me say this before. Even when you win, you get beat
Right.
up. Um, it hurts the day after. I can just imagine what those kids that wrestled for 5 matches at Pulaski yesterday, because that is a tremendous tournament. Probably, next to the Cheesehead, it's probably the best tournament in the state of Wisconsin, kid for kid. And wow, what those kids can go through and those athletes go through is just amazing.
It's so true, because you can get through that a really tough time, and we know life's tough. It's hard to get through life, but you get through those toughest times, and you can conquer anything.
Absolutely, yes.
You mentioned we had Keegan Jenrich on last week, and we asked him about his experience at state and just wrestling in the Kohl Center, 15,000 people. I mean, it's got to be the most amazing thing. And I mean, you've done it as a wrestler, as an official as well. I mean, can you speak to that experience? What's that like being under those lights in that building?
Well, I've experienced it as a coach and as an official. I never made it to the state tournament in high school. It is, an amazing thing. I remember the first wrestler I took to a state tournament was Kevin Schmitz from Chilton, Wisconsin. And he had never been there. He was a senior. And I got him down there earlier, and I just made him walk. And this was back in the old barn,
Sure.
actually.
Oh, what a great building.
And I made him, it was wonderful. And made him walk around in there and, to see the crowd, because the first time you're out on that mat and that crowd is screaming and there's all these people, that's an intimidating place. And he had a fantastic tournament, ended up meeting the kid who had beat him at the sectional tournament from Wyowega, Fremont. I think his name was Chris Akey. And Chris had beaten Kevin up pretty good in the sectional finals. And in the finals of the state tournament, we turned that around, and Kevin beat Chris. And it was the most amazing thing to me, was sitting there as a coach, and just that, it was so loud. Our match went to overtime, so Division III and Division I were done, and everybody was focused on that middle mat, Division II, and we still had 3 minutes to go, and it was loud. That's all I remember, how loud it was. And it came down to a tie, and it came down to criteria, and we had the criteria to win the match. So you couldn't have gotten any closer.
As fellow officials, you can't describe the rush of working those big games, working those big matches, and it's so hard to convey that to people. It's a real thing that you can feel, and I wish more people kind of understood that. Maybe we'd have more officials in all these sports if they kind of understood that. But you're walking into the Kohl Center, or the old barn, or I was fortunate to walk onto Camp Randall. Those are experiences that are just I'll never forget those. And I don't know if anybody's ever considering officiating, remember those are attainable goals.
Yes. It's kind of our pinnacle to make the state tournament as an official. And what you say, I don't know if you've ever been to the state wrestling tournament, but they march the kids in, the finalists in. What's the song? We Are the Champions.
Yes.
Right? And the whole place is dark. And as an official, you get introduced, and you're on the mat. You're walked out onto the mat, and you're under the lights, and it's just dark. It is the coolest experience. And every time I get down there, I think this will be my 7th time down this year.
That's awesome.
It's just amazing. And then I've been fortunate enough to do the state team tournament, which is held in the old barn now. And that place, I did the state championship Division II 2 years ago, Luxembourg, Casco, and Amory. And you couldn't hear yourself thinking there. It was so loud. But, you know, we work hard at
Yeah.
officiating. Joe, I'm sure you did too. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just show up and put on the stripes for the night of the match and go do it. There's a lot of work
No,
ahead of
absolutely. You're
that.
100% correct. And the officials that take it serious, and that's 99% of them. I mean, they want to get better. They want to watch film. They want to work matches. They want to learn from their mistakes. They know they make mistakes. We know we make mistakes. It happens, but we
Yeah.
that's how we get better. And that's why I'm always fascinated asking, just how do you overcome failure? Because as an official, it's actually one of the things that drew me to that was I want to get better at overcoming failure. And if you want to be a failure, just officiate a sport and you'll fail quickly. People will let you know.
Oh, yes, they do. Don't they? Yeah, it's an amazing feeling to be out there doing the finals of a tournament. And today, the way the wrestlers are so much better
Yeah, I bet.
today than they were when I was wrestling, and even when I was coaching. The last 10 years, the ability of these kids to scramble out of positions that, they shouldn't be able to
Right.
do that. And you, as an official, you're sitting there and you're just holding your call, and you got both sides screaming at you. It really is a fun experience. I sure could know how it could be intimidating to you as well if you're not ready yet. Like I said my nephew Nathan, who's the ref from Wrightstown, it was his first time doing the Pulaski tournament. He's coming up. He's moving very quickly. He'll be at the state tournament, I would say, within 3 to 4
great.
years. Okay. But this was his first major tournament that he ever officiated. And my gosh, he was cool as a cucumber out there. It was just, I was so darn proud of him.
He's a natural. Some guys are just naturals at it. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Dan, when you talked about the ability of the wrestlers are different today. So what do you attribute to that? And maybe even think a little bit about what was the difference between you in high school and even looking at Zach, your son, and your training. Yeah. How have things changed from that aspect?
Well, the media and the social media and all those platforms really have changed it, because you can go out there and you can watch almost anything.
Yeah.
I was watching the Big Ten wrestling today, and I tend to flip that on whenever I can, whenever there's wrestling on, and you get to watch what these kids are doing. And now, I think from when I was in high school, I was fortunate to have a college wrestler as a coach, but I don't think many schools back then did have that.
Okay.
Now I think that's kind of common to have collegiate wrestlers now coaching the high school level. And they've brought a lot of that new technique in, and of course the clubs too. Yeah. There's a lot of good technique coming out of there, and we just put kids in those situations in the practice room and say, hey, figure it out, get out of there. And so those, I always call them situation goes. Just put them in weird positions and, let them go, let them experience it and try to figure it out. And I think that it really has moved the sport forward. And it's cool to watch the girls coming in now. A lot of those have those same attributes, and they're really much better than we were.
Are the rules the same in the girls' game as the boys' games, or are there any rule differences?
At the high school level, they're exactly the same. Okay. At the collegiate level, it's a little different, yes. They wrestle, at the collegiate level, they wrestle more of an international style, more of a freestyle.
Okay.
Versus what we do is folk style.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. we've talked a ton of wrestling, but I know you've done certainly some other coaching. You've been involved with some other groups. I mean, you've worked with Little League Baseball. We had Kevin Kostelecki with Appleton Little League on earlier. You know, the Pop Warner guys we've had. I mean, those guys are as old school. They're older than us, I think, even. Yeah. So you've been at both of those organizations. I mean, you're literally one of those guys that a community just can't do without, where you're just helping kids, really. Just that's getting them in experiences. So it's some great organizations that you worked with. I'm sure you've had great experiences at both.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Kind of came up with my son through those ranks. He did Little League, and so I kind of got talked into it, and I had the perfect job. I had the summers off to do this as a teacher, so I had the time, and it takes a lot of time to work with those guys. I mean, not a lot of time, but you practice a couple times a week and whatever, and then I did Pop Warner football, and I did youth wrestling with him, and all of a sudden, so I went through all those organizations, and they all help develop these kids and give them the experience. And now there's so many more. I know Eric's kids are involved in hockey and lacrosse, and I always thought those would have been great opportunities. I mean, play a sport with a stick and you get to hit people.
Exactly.
I mean, hey, that's good
Absolutely.
stuff. I never had those opportunities, never had that exposure to those sports when I was a young man or young adolescent. And I just, the opportunities these kids have, not only for sports, but for all the other things that are out there. It's kind of mind blowing when you think about you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, you really can. It is amazing in the theater world, in the music world. I mean, you pick anything, and there's opportunities. So yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely really cool to see. And I know both of you guys being teachers at Appleton East. There's so many opportunities at Appleton East for the kids, like the outdoor club. It's amazing.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we would have been able to go hunting and fishing when I was in high school? I probably wouldn't have done any sports.
Yeah, good point.
Thinking back, talking about high school for you, after high school, you decide that you want to keep wrestling a little bit. So what was that process like? Picking a school and deciding you're going to wrestle.
I was, I actually had more people interested in me in playing football than wrestling. Okay. So I went and visited a few schools and talked to people about their football programs and so forth. And the only school that really contacted me about wrestling was UW Eau Claire, and which was pretty close to my home. It was an hour away, which was far enough away from the parents so I could do my own thing, but yet it was close enough to go home. So I don't know. I just felt like I never got where I wanted in wrestling as a high schooler. Okay. And so that was kind of my driving factor in going out for wrestling at Eau Claire. I spent 4 years there on the varsity squad, had some success. I would say I wasn't a great college wrestler. I was average, I suppose. But I learned so much. And my college coach was Don Parker. And I got away, I'm like a lot of other kids. You get away from home. And I played a little bit harder than I should have. And got in a little bit of academic hot water. And he's the one that kind of grabbed me and said, "Hey, get your act together." And I have a lot of respect for that man for that and what he did for me. So I guess that was my motivating factor in wrestling, was I just wanted to accomplish more. And then it was Mr. Parker, Don Parker, that got me involved in the coaching at the college level, and he also got me involved in reffing. I started reffing, I think, when I was a sophomore in college. Okay. For some of the local schools, they were just trying to find officials for JV matches and so forth. So I did that, and Yeah.
Is that how you became an official? Just starting that way in college?
Yes. And then yeah.
Oh, excellent.
So I mean, my coach was a college or was a high school official too. So he took me along to one of the meetings. This is going back. You'll remember this, Joe, where we'd have to meet for the to talk about the rule changes and all that.
Sure.
Now we just do it online. So
Yeah.
I remember going to the first meeting with coach, and then I started officiating. He also got me officiating college wrestling for a while in there, and finally, he's the one that talked me into becoming a teacher. So he really,
Quite a guy.
he led me. Sometimes probably put like a bull ring in my nose and pulled me along, but I got there sooner or later. But yeah.
Isn't it amazing you meet people like that in your life? Just special people, mentors that just, I don't know, help you along. It's pretty amazing.
And I find that wrestling is full of people like that. I'm sure every sport is, but experiencing it from my point of view, Mike Blazik was the official, was the head of the Fox Valley Wrestling Officials Association here in Appleton. And when I stopped coaching high school back in, 2005, 2006 or something like that, I had no interest in going on and becoming an official. At least to the degree I am today. But Mike Blazik was the one that pulled me in, and he just kind of paved my way, I mean, there were some great officials in that association. Brad Siebers from Kimberly, Larry Goris from the Nash, and of course, Mike Blazik. So, again, you talk about the mentors. Yeah. And I hope I've done that for some people too. I know I brought my nephew Nathan along and my son Zach, who's officiating over on the west side of the state. I've had a number of high school kids that I've got into the officiating. The only trouble is they graduate from high school and they go to college and they move away and you don't have them anymore.
You're right. That's very, very true. How about one of our friends? You able to help Travis Korth, or is he a lost
I worked
cause?
with Travis, and Travis is doing a great job now. I remember he was in high school. I remember getting him a lot of stuff in a lot of matches in the middle school, the Appleton Middle School programs.
Sure.
I also assigned for a couple different conferences, wrestling officials, and so I've been in the middle school thing. So I've been able to take high school officials and put them in there, and a lot of times either myself or another one of our officials, Pat DeBruin, Mike Schumacher, Travis now, they'll work with them. In fact, I think this next Sunday, Kimberly has their youth tournament, and there's 2 or 3 of us veteran officials that'll be there working with a bunch of high school kids.
Wow.
Sure, that's wonderful to hear. You touched on something. Obviously I harp on the lack of officials, but I tell you what, that assigner role is one of the most difficult, especially in this day and age with very few officials. That assigner role is just, I've done it for lacrosse and some youth football, and I tell you what, that's the very reason why I have gray hair, is that assigner role.
I always told that those the kids I coached. That's why I got gray hair. But I get what you're saying. And then to do it during COVID, and there was some. Yeah, we've really had to scramble in the last few years, and with our numbers being down and continuing to go down, we got to be inventive in how we're covering all these, events.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but in some sports, lacrosse, some games have been canceled. There's just not enough officials, not enough people, and it's tough. I mean, it's a tough thing to do, and you certainly have to be outside your comfort zone to do it. But it's well worth it. Otherwise, at the end of the day, the kids don't play, and
Right.
that's we don't want that.
Yeah, and I just wish we could convince more people to try it. I know there's some people that aren't going to thrive at it. You almost got to like confrontation, I guess. At least
Yeah.
somewhat. But I really, as an veteran official, I try to run interference for those young kids.
Absolutely.
So when I'm there on next Sunday, if somebody needs to talk to an official, they're going to talk to me. They're not going to talk to the kid that made the call, just because we
Right.
don't need to chase them off that quickly.
Right.
You know, let
Absolutely.
them figure out what this is about, and they'll learn how to deal with people and how to handle people, and yeah, it's a learning experience.
It absolutely, you're always learning. It takes years.
And you never learn it all.
No, I've
That's
yet to
for
work
sure.
the perfect game. Trying to, but it just haven't done it yet.
No, I agree with you. You always think maybe I should have called Stalin in that match. There's always something.
Yeah. We're talking refereeing here. Talk a little bit about what your night looks like, because I think people think you just, walk onto the mat and let's start reffing. So if you want to take us on a typical night or a typical tournament or whatever you feel comfortable with.
Well, if I do a typical duel, usually it starts at about 5 o'clock or 5:30, depending on the conference. We have to be there to do the weigh-in, so we weigh all the individuals in, both boys and girls, and now that has changed tremendously from what it used to be. Now they're weighing in uniform, which I think is a great thing. We weigh in shoulder to shoulder, so both teams are there. If there's girls wrestling on the team, they're weighing right in with the guys. And that usually takes, 20 minutes to a half hour. Once you're done with that, then you move out we have to with our varsities, we always do a pre-meet talk with them. We go through rule changes, our expectations, answer any questions they have, kind of take them through the logistics of how the match is going to go and the things we do that are different. I think one thing we do is we talk to the kids a lot more on the mat than they ever used to. We will use different phrases. If we're out on the edge, we'll be saying center in, wrestle in. We're always, in a way, giving them hints of what we're looking for, what we want them to do. If we're thinking somebody is not working as hard as they can be, we'll say, let's wrestle, initiate, follow through, things like that. And so I talk about that in the pre-meet, so there really shouldn't be any surprises for the kids when they're out there. Once I have that done, then I go out to the gym and I make sure the facilities are set up right, that I got enough distance between the team benches and the mat and enough safety mats, around the mat, which now is not such a big deal because our mats are a lot bigger. So they have safety areas attached to them, where before that wasn't the case. Meet with the timer and the scorer, talk to the trainer, and finally about an hour after you're done with the weigh-in and all that stuff, then you start reffing, and it depends. It might be that you have to do the JV matches. Sometimes there's another official that'll do that as well. In the FVA, a lot of times we'll be running 2 mats for JVs because there's just that many JV wrestlers or girl wrestlers, because they combine the girls in there as well. And then you start your varsity. If I had a 5:30 weigh-in, I'd probably start my varsity at about 7 o'clock. And a good varsity duel will take you about an hour and a half.
Wow.
Very nice. Last week, as I mentioned, we had Keegan on, and he talked a lot about just that weigh-in process, or how he deals with weight adding, and a lot of it comes down to the water weight. But what Yes, what are your thoughts on that? What do you see? I mean, I remember when, 30 or 50, however long ago we were in high school, the wrestlers were in their sweatsuits jumping rope. I mean, is it still kind of like that, or what?
It is way better than it used to be. When I was in high school, I dropped 18 pounds in 3 days.
Wow.
That's unheard of now. The kids have to pass a hydration test, and then they skin fold them to determine what their lowest weights are. And so that's all established ahead of time. So I think it's way better than it used to be. The drastic drops of weight aren't as much. I mean, you might have to take off a pound, on the day of a match or something, but I don't see the problems like we used to have, and you don't see the kids that look like, and we used to always laugh, Skeletor, just eyes sunk in, but it was excessive back in my day, and even in college it was still pretty crazy. It's much better than it used to be. And all the colleges are following the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin started at that hydration, and now I think it's in all 50 states, and most of the colleges are using it too.
What was you get a teaching license, you're coaching in college. So what was your first coaching job in high school?
Okay, I taught at Little Surrey, Wisconsin, up north of Green Bay. I coached football and track there. Also helped out with their weight room, and I did travel down the road to work with the Gillette wrestling. And one of my teammates in college was from Gillette, and he put his coach on me once he found out I was up there. And the next thing I know, he was calling me and saying, "Hey, I got a heavyweight here that I need someone to work out with." So I'd go down and work out with him. And heavyweight, his last name is escaping me right now, but he is a coach at Bayport.
Oh, okay. Not
the head coach, but an assistant, Mark Hansen. Yeah, Mark Hansen. He's a coach at Bayport, and I worked with him a little bit at his senior year, and he had a successful year. So I left Surrey after 1 year. It was a great place to start, but they didn't have wrestling. So I went to Chilton High School, and I was there at Chilton for, I think, 5 years as the coach, and had 2 state champs. Fantastic individuals. I mentioned Kevin Schmitz before, and the other one was Jeremy Ott, who now is a coach at Nicolay, and his son is ranked number 2, I think, at 175 this year. So, once you get sucked into that wrestling, you kind of stay in.
What's it like being a high school teacher? What was your career like? I mean, you seem like the best teacher ever. I would have loved to have you as my teacher.
Depends on which kid you talk to.
I suppose.
It is really an amazing thing. And I talked about finally seeing the light bulb, where all of a sudden they just light up when they finally get what you're trying to teach them. And those moments are awesome. And it's cool when you hear from students that you haven't heard from for years, and all of a sudden, they come back and they send you an email or something, and and tell you how successful they've become. And then, a lot of times they'll give you some of that credit, and it's just like, wow. You don't hear it too much when you're the teacher.
Right.
When you're teaching, it's usually the students afterwards that come and talk to you and say, "Hey, you really made a difference." And
has that been one of the hardest, or maybe I guess one of the hardest parts of being a teacher for you guys is just the communication with the kids? I mean, that has to be ever evolving. I would think for you guys, that has to be one of the biggest challenges is just how do you communicate with kids and get your message across and have them receive it?
Well, and yeah, it used to be so much. I don't know. I think it was easier
Yeah.
back when I first started, um, because they didn't have the distractions. I think that's the biggest factor is they have so many distractions now with the technology that I think it's hard for them to just concentrate on one thing.
The phone is the greatest invention ever and the worst invention ever, all at the same time, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, today you almost have to be an entertainer, where in the past you did not.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it always helped to be a good entertainer.
Yes. Even as a coach,
Absolutely.
when I even, this was back in the early 2000s, the early 2000s, coaching was, we didn't have the technology that we do today. So even being a coach, you didn't have to be so much an entertainer. You could focus on the different things. I mean, it was coming to that point where we could videotape a swing and things like that, but not like it is today.
Yeah, I remember watching video of the wrestlers and stuff back when I was coaching, and yeah, we did that, film work like I'm sure they do. Like you always hear the NFL coaches talk about watching film. We did it too, but now I think it's to such a point you can break stuff down to the, movement by movement, and it's true. And I think in teaching, in some ways, don't get me wrong, technology has made teaching easier too, don't you think, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also has made it harder. So,
well, I always think, and I know this with Dan, a good coach is a teacher, because you're teaching, and a good teacher is also a coach. I mean, the two things go hand in hand, and Dan was excellent at both. Well, so I know that firsthand.
Yeah, I was actually just at East last Thursday. I filled in for they didn't have a JV official, so I came and I was able to talk to what's Jackie's last name?
Schmedberg.
Yes, thank you. And I was talking to her, and I said, we were talking about sports in general and getting programs going, and I said, well, I think the thing that really hurt a lot of programs were when teachers stopped coaching, because a lot of times, at least when I was interviewing, you were hired not only to be a teacher, you were hired to be a coach. And somewhere we lost that.
Yeah.
And
that's really interesting. That's very true. You see that in the official side too, right? Back in the day,
yep,
all the coaches were teachers and a lot of the officials were teachers.
Yes. And then, so I was talking to Jackie Smedberg, the principal at East, and I was asking her about that. And she said, there seems to be a little trend. I said, that we have so many coaches that are non-teachers in the schools now. And she thinks it's starting to turn back the other way a little bit. At least that's what she told me. So yeah. I'm hoping it does, because, as a teacher, you have their best interest as a student. You're not just worried about how they do on the, let's say, on the football field or the wrestling mat, but you're also worried about them and how they do in the classroom. And I think that's a good mix.
So Dan, I want to go back to you coaching at Chilton, and there's a story, and somebody told me I needed to ask you to talk about the story of how you kind of intimidated your chemistry class one morning after maybe a little preschool workout.
Oh, was this the time the cable broke?
Oh yeah, you know it.
Oh yeah. Well, I was doing pull downs on the universal weight machine, and the cable broke as I was coming down, and I rammed the top of the bar into the top of my head and split my head open.
Oh.
Of course, I couldn't see how bad it was because it was on the top of my head. So I just, I got the blood stopped, and Um, went and took a shower and got ready for school. And the next thing I know, I'm in the doctor's office. And apparently I had first hour off. That was my prep period. And all of a sudden I started wandering around the school, just walking into rooms and walking around and going out. And the assistant principal took me to the doctor, to the clinic, and I had a concussion. So yeah, I remember there were some stupid things like that back in the day.
So a different question for you. So
Absolutely.
you've been at state as a coach, you've been at state as a ref, and you've been at state as a parent.
Yes.
And you've been at state, for nephews and things like that as well. Which one is the most nerve-wracking for you? And talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
You know what? Every one of them is nerve-wracking. As a coach, oh man, you're sitting there and you can't do anything. And you got to rely on what you've taught this or what this athlete has learned. And yeah. And then as a parent, it's just helpless as a parent. You're just sitting in the seat and you can't do anything. And as a referee, as a referee, it's the coolest thing in the world. You're at the pinnacle. So yeah, every one of them is a great experience, but they all have their own tensions and nervousness that go with them. I actually, when my son made the state tournament as a sophomore, I was, that might have been, that was the year after I had my hip surgery. So that was my second year down at state, and he qualified for the state tournament. And so I would be able to, the other officials would move around so that I could watch my son wrestle. So that was really pretty cool. And we've done that with other father-son wrestler officials too. And my son was a sophomore, and Zach, he ended up drawing the number one kid in the state the first round and got beat. Yep. And then he got, I think, the kid who took third or fourth, it was sixth in the next round and got beaten. I can just remember reffing when he was still in the tournament, and I was just so tight. I just, and then all of a sudden when he lost his second match at the state tournament, it was like this big, huge rock got lifted off of my shoulders, and I got to enjoy the rest of the state tournament.
Oh, that's great to hear. And of course, one of your biggest accomplishments, I would say, right, was in 2015 at the Red Smith Banquet when you were honored with the Appleton East Patriot Award, right? I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that, does it?
No, that was really cool. And I think I had worked with all the youth programs for all those years, and then I think I was the athletic club's president at that point, or maybe I was the vice president. I don't remember. And the athletic club nominated me for that award, and I was fortunate enough to get it. So that was really a pretty neat experience. Yes.
Well, you answered that one well. I appreciate it. No, I mean, it was always one of my favorite parts of the banquet. I mean, it's kind of what we do with this podcast too. It's literally highlighting, your story is absolutely amazing. I mean, your life is amazing. Just the people that you've helped, the time that you've given. And that's why we did that at the banquet as well. And that's why we do this podcast, is just to highlight. I mean, people need to hear these stories. It's incredible. It's a heck of a way to live a life.
It is wonderful getting those accolades, but just living it and working with all these kids that I've worked with over the years. And, I'm as you probably know now, after this last this little interview. I'm not very good with technology. My wife won't let me have Facebook or anything like that, but which I should thank her, because, man, I couldn't have done this without support, her support, and allowed me to do this for years and years. In fact, she's about 2 years from retirement, and I said when she's retired that I am going to step down from the reffing, and we're going to spend time together, and travel. And so that's kind of the payoff there.
Where are you guys going? Where's the first trip?
We were just talking about that not too long ago. Where do we want to go? And we were talking about going out to the Northeast, into Maine and Arcadia National Park, and maybe, seeing the fall colors and so forth. So, yeah.
Well deserved, I would say.
It'll be cool. It'll be cool. And she's been in education for all these years, and hasn't been able to do any of those things during the fall and the winter. We'll probably go somewhere when it's warm, in January and February. So, yeah, those are things we're looking forward to.
That wouldn't be a bad thing, right? Maybe miss a winter or two up here. You could stand that.
But I just want to say, just working and all the interactions I've had with students and athletes over the years. I was the lucky guy. I really was. It's been great.
So Dan, before we end here, where can people catch you now? So you have, you said you're going back to state this year. Do you have a regional and sectional as well?
Yes, I have. I have a regional at Beaver Dam.
Okay.
And that will be like the Oshkosh schools. I think maybe Neenah might be there, and going south. And then I have my sectional at O'Connell Falls. That is probably the toughest Division II sectional in the state, and it's been that way for the last 10 years. And for some reason, the WIAA keeps assigning me to that sectional. I think I've been there 5 out of the last 6 years. So
they know you.
Yeah, and it is amazing the number of 1 and 2 ranked kids that'll hit in that tournament. And then, it is unbelievable, because that's Luxembourg, Casco, and Freedom, and Wrightstown, and Denmark, and Two Rivers, and just some fantastic wrestling schools in Division II. And then I have team sectional will be at Wrightstown, or not at Wrightstown, at Slinger. So that's a Division I. So I have the last duel to go to team state for that one.
Okay.
It'll be a busy month of February, and I always told everybody, if you're involved in wrestling, the winter goes pretty fast in Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, good luck on that run. That's like you said, that's the pinnacle, right? This is the exciting time. Why we do what we do.
Yep, that's what we're working for. So, and I hope not only enjoy it, but to bring some kids along over the year, that are refs now that I've been working with, and they're coming up, and I'll get to see them do this tournament sooner or later. I hope my nephew will be there at some point, and my son, I'm sure, will get there. So, yeah, I look forward to sitting in the stands and watching them on that. That is going to be great.
Well, Dan, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being on us. And, as your former colleague, it's a true pleasure to sit down and talk with you. I was super happy that you agreed to do this, and it's a blast. I'm glad we got to tell your story.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being here. I was a little apprehensive at first, but yeah, I enjoyed myself. So thank you very much.
We're pretty harmless.
Yeah. And Joe, it was nice meeting you, and thanks
Likewise.
for what you guys are doing. I've been listening to your Newsa-Cast, and I've kind of dabbled into some history stuff. And yeah, I'm kind of enjoying myself. So I just put on a podcast and putts in the grass, Jeff.
It's an amazing world. Absolutely. I love the podcast world. Anything you want to learn, it's out there.
Right.
You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Please help us grow by subscribing or sharing the Newsa-Cast with friends, or follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, or Instagram. One of the best ways to help the show is to post a comment or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. All right, Tosh, it's that time again, once again, for the Red Smith Banquet Throwback. Back to 2019, where we had legendary University of Wisconsin marching band director Michael Leckrone.
Yeah, a person who made a huge difference in a lot of young people's life. He was the band director from 1975 all the way to 2019. And he put the Badger Band on the map, right?
Oh, he 100%
the fifth
did.
quarter.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
That was all under him. He started, everything that you know about the Badger Band, and you know, they come to Lambeau, obviously every Badger game, every sport in a Badger game, we all know they're absolutely incredible. Really.
Yeah. How exciting was it when they showed up when we're in a parade as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That always made a huge difference in the parade. You're super excited to see the Badger Band come.
Just crisp and loud and just so talented. And yeah, they're legendary. And he's a character. I mean, I tower over him, and that's saying something. So yeah. No, he's just a little guy with an absolute, I mean that in the best way, with an absolutely huge personality and talent, and just an incredible boy. When people that have been to he retired, we had him in 2019, and that was the year that he retired, but I can still picture him up on those steps, just directing the band, and he was a showman. He was true showman in every sense of the word.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to have him. It was good to have him when the year he retired, and talk about the history. And you're going to enjoy this throwback, especially if you love a little Wisconsin band.
Yes, stay till the end, folks. Stay till the end.
Red Smith Sports Awards Banquet Throwback.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport in Wisconsin, and also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
The man do know how to make an entrance.
Well, thank you for having me on. Following Chichi Rodriguez is a lot like going on your first blind date. Isn't everything you'd hope for, but it's better than nothing.
The second act here at Skyline Comedy Club.
I'm not going
Mike
to
Leckrone. Give it up for Mike. So, how's kind of semi-retirement?
Well, I haven't found out yet, because from the time I announced, we've had football, we've had a bowl trip.
Bowl game.
won the Pinstripe Bowl, and then we started right in with basketball and hockey, so I haven't really had a chance to digest it yet, but it's coming soon.
I don't have the picture, but you played basketball at Butler University.
I did as a freshman.
And you played with, you remember Joey Chitwood? Guy who makes the shot in Hoosiers? You played with the man that inspired that, correct?
Bobby Plump. Bobby Plump was a classmate of mine. Yeah. Went to Milan High School, small school. Had,
Little one, yeah.
Yeah, I think it had 120 people in the whole high school. They beat Muncie Central for the state championship of Indiana. And when you win the state championship in Indiana, you've done something in that state because it's open class. There was no class division. And Bobby went on to be at Butler, and I got to know him very well. And he is a true legend. I mean, Bobby told me once since he made that shot, he's never had to buy another drink in his life.
So you take over the program here, well, down the road, 50 years ago. Tell me about the state of it at the time. Wasn't very good.
It was Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But the state of it was an unusual time to take over. We hadn't won a football game in 24 times, I think.
Oh.
We had not won. We tied a couple in there, but we hadn't won.
Oh,
and then the team wasn't doing really well. We were in the middle of that conflict, that war that was going on at the time. So it wasn't a popular thing to put on a uniform and march around. Not in Wisconsin.
Right.
And it was just a time where enrollment was kind of sagging. There were a lot of things that weren't going well. And I was the third marching band director in 3 years. So the man who preceded me by a couple of years was a man named Ray Dvorak, who was a true legend in the history of the Wisconsin band. But Ray had retired, and there was that interim period where it just wasn't. They didn't take advantage of the fact that they could have hired me right away.
Okay. So you take a look at the situation. What immediately came to mind, and what was it you said, this has to happen here?
Because everything was there. It was a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
It was like everything was in place. The people in the athletic department wanted to have things going. Everything was in the right place. We had people who were enthusiastic. We had Wisconsin fans, and there's nothing like it. And I say that not to just placate you, but it's true. I mean, the Wisconsin fans are like no others, and I knew there was a base there that had to work, and I had willing kids who wanted to do what they had to do to make it work.
It almost became like a fitness situation, didn't it? You had to be fit to be in the band.
Yeah, well, in those days we had some kids, and I hope there's no former football players here, but there were some of the kids who said being in band was harder than going out for the football team at that particular time. It may well have been. Remember, we didn't win for 24 in a row, but everything was in the right place, and I really was pleased about that.
So you start going out, and varsity kicks in. When did the fifth quarter actually start?
1978.
How did it start? What
Well,
you cook it up at?
The way the fifth quarter started was like a lot of good things that become tradition. It was an accident. We had always played, all Big Ten bands do it. They go out on the field after the game is over, and you've all seen them, and they do their show.
There it is.
They stand there and they play the show that they just played for halftime. I got a little bored with that, to tell you the truth. At the beginning, I thought this is deadly. All we're doing is playing the same things that people have heard before. We're not doing anything different. There's nothing lively about it. We were waiting for the fans to leave the stadium, and so I said, well, let's throw something in during the post game to maybe get the crowd involved. And the first thing we did was Beer Barrel Polka. I know everybody in the room knows the Beer Barrel Polka. And you know the words. Well, you think you know the words, but you will sing some words. You'll sing words to it. And so I thought, well, this is a natural. And we tried it, and it worked. And I thought, well, this is good. And a little bit later, the kids in the band that were going to hockey games was doing a chant back and forth with the people at Dane County Coliseum, where they would say, less filling tastes great. I remember that motto. And the two teams, the two fan bases would holler back and forth at each other. And I thought, well, that's not working, because first of all, it's maybe broadcasting a commercial product.
Yeah, okay.
Wasn't a good idea. People in the stands might think students were drinking. that wasn't a good idea. So I said to the band, I said, when we get to that spot where they would say, taste less filling, tastes great, we should tell, when you say Wisconsin, you've said it all. And we just, when they would stand up, we would jump up and say the same thing, try to overshout it. Before long, it caught on.
Beautiful.
And the next thing you know, it became a part of the staple at the post-game show. That same year, about the last couple games, Elroy was getting complaints about the fact that people were shaking the upper deck when they did You Said It All. They were jumping up and down, and the upper deck was shaking. And he was concerned that there was going to be a safety factor. He went to the extent of having the place tested, make sure that it was safe, and it was safe. It's the normal rocking motion that you would want to have in a structure like that.
And then Jump Around came around.
You know, that was later, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
But so Elroy and I formulated, we're going to not do it, but we're going to tell the people we're not going to do it. We're going to say over the loudspeaker, we because of the safety concerns of the band and the athletic department, we're not going to play You Said It All until 5 minutes after the final gun. And so give all you people in the stands a chance to leave.
Beautiful.
Well, you know what happens. Nobody left, and so that became a part of our legend, I guess. And I was a local sports writer at the time in the State Journal named Glenn Miller, and he started calling it in the newspaper the fifth quarter. And I liked the sound of that, and it stuck. And we've been doing it ever since.
Do you remember a performance that stands out above anything else you did?
Rose Bowl, 1992 and 93, 94. When
Here they come in the Rose Bowl parade, by the way.
That was so much everything that I had hoped for. I'd been at the university 25 years when we finally got to the Rose Bowl, and I had written it off. I thought it's never going to happen. I'm never going to get to see the Rose Bowl. And then magically, Barry put together a team and a magical season that we won the Big Ten championship. We got to go to the Rose Bowl. We won the Rose Bowl, and it was just magical. The whole week was just unlike anything Now, I've been there 5 other times, and they've all been great, but that first one was special.
You inevitably had to tell the university that you were done, but you wanted to tell the band first, right?
Yeah, I did.
How'd that go?
It was the hardest thing I've done up to this point. It's a very hard thing because I didn't want to necessarily say it, but I knew it was time, and it was the hardest thing I've done. The kids in the band, I think, understood. They think they understand that I would rather keep going and know that I could keep going rather than to say, well, somebody should have told me a couple of years ago, and maybe there are people out there that were saying that a couple of years ago, but that was my feeling about it. I felt like the time had come, and for some reason that 50 seemed kind of magical again for me.
Is there something you're going to miss more than anything else?
The kids.
Yeah. The
kids in the band, because they've made it special, and each day they make it special that I get a chance to work with them. You've heard a lot of people on this stage talk about how important the young people are, and they are. That's where everything is going to happen. Good is going to happen, and I look around the band and I say these are the best people they're ever going to know in the rest of their lives. The people that are in the band, and that makes it very special for me.
He is our Red Smith Award winner for an amazing career, 50 years. I have one thing before we go. What? Mike's crew's going to stick around and do a fifth quarter. How's that sound? Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mike Leckrone on 50 years of fabulous work for the Badgers. Michael, thank you so much. Fantastic. Take a picture or two.
Well, folks, it's that time. It's forgotten, and I'm never forgetting. Nailed it. It took me a while. But Tosh, yeah, we're forgetting stuff. We've forgotten stuff. And what has been forgotten in your world?
Well, the one thing I'd like to forget this time of year are the short days and the lack of sun.
Yeah.
I hate this time of year.
Yeah, agreed.
This is tough. It's tough to get outside. It's tough to, get your body motivated to do anything. You 4:30 at night, it's getting dark. It is a little warmer. I guess we take that with a grain of salt, but it'd sure be nice to have a little bit of sun.
Yeah, well, we get a little bit more every day, so that's encouraging, right? Glass half full guy here, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it takes a toll on the body, right? You're so tired. It's so funny because you think, June or July when we get so much sunlight, you go outside at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. You feel like it's middle of the afternoon. You're all fired up.
Right.
Boy, I can't even get off down the hallway at 7:30 at night. I'm so exhausted because it's it's been pitch black for so long. So I feel your pain.
Exactly.
I feel your pain.
So Joe, what are you looking at here?
Well, Tosh, I guess I didn't realize I had forgotten this. Maybe I never even knew this, but I ran across a really, really interesting stat for my forgotten. And it's every single NFL season that's ever been played has either had Curly Lambeau, Tom Landry, or Bill Belichick coaching their teams. One of those three guys has coached in every NFL season. And I guess I maybe never knew that, but if I did, I certainly forgot that. And I think it's well worth bringing that back, that we should never forget that. That's kind of an insane stat. And it appears that it may come to an end after this season. I'm not sure Belichick gets picked up, but it's not looking too good for Mr. Belichick.
Yeah, it's surprising. You think somebody would pick him up, but he is 72? So, maybe some of that and maybe some of his experience and control, those are some things that people are a little shying away from. But, we'll have to see what happens with Mr. Possibly the GOAT of coaching, right?
Yeah, GOAT of football. How about this? What if Paul Rabel, those two guys are tight, maybe Belichick's a PLL head coach. See how that goes.
There
That'd
you
be
go.
Kind of cool.
I've seen him with a stick in his hand, so
it's his favorite thing ever. If anybody ever really wants to know what Bill Belichick is like, he's actually super intelligent, obviously. But Paul Rabel, who's maybe the best lacrosse player to ever play, had a podcast. I think it was called like Suited Up or something like that by Paul Rabel. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But he had the most incredible interview with Bill Belichick I ever heard. I mean, Belichick loves lacrosse, and it was, if you can find that anywhere, I'd highly recommend that as a listen.
Nice. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we forgot stuff, but what's something we're going to never forget? How about you, Tosh? What are you never forgetting?
Well, I kind of came back to this, and it only happened because it's being remodeled right now, and that's the Appleton Public Library, or public libraries in general. Kind of went away, get your books and maybe go buy them or start reading them on your phone or your device. But when the public library started to remodel and it moved over to my side of the town at Best Buy, I've kind of gotten back to getting books and getting them from the library. So, public libraries are great. You can get audiobooks. You can get books on your phone. I still kind of like to sit in bed and read a little bit with the paper book. There's still something about turning the page that I like.
It's so funny you say that, Tosh. That's actually one of my New Year's resolutions. Is I want to read more, and I've got them right next to me. I got like 6 books staring me down right now as I'm recording the Newsa-Cast. They're looking at me. They want me to read them, and you're right. There's nothing better than reading. I've got some friends that do the same thing. That was actually that's funny you said that. That was one of their New Year's resolutions as well, was to read more. So hell yeah, everybody should read more. It's a great,
absolutely,
a great deal. I got to ask you, maybe I asked you this one other time, but it's the great debate. If you listen to an audiobook, have you read the book? Can you put that as a check mark that I read the book, or how do you view that?
That's a good question, because I don't think I've ever been able to listen to an audiobook. I just haven't done it yet. It sounds kind of weird, being in a day and age, but I can listen to a podcast, but listening to somebody read a book, for some reason does not work for me. I have to read it myself.
Well, there's no doubt. I've found that you have to have the right narrator. That makes all the difference in the world. I can't, if I don't like the narrator, I'm not going to listen to it. But there's several books that I've listened to here to quite a few now recently, and I kind of enjoy it. I mean, my preferred method is to sit down and put the readers on and get in a well-lit room now. And then I'll read, but I still like to read. But audiobooks, I don't know. It's a forever debate for sure.
Joe, what are you never forgetting?
Well, Tosh, in some of our earlier episodes, you may have heard of my journey of learning how to play disc golf and having a good time with that. And, it's wintertime. It's been a while since I played disc golf, and gosh darn it, here in the city of Appleton, thank you, at Pierce Park and Tallulah Park, they keep the baskets up, and went out and played a little disc golf this afternoon, Tash, and I'm never forgetting the fact that I threw a disc down a fairway in January of 2024. It was a good time.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. Not often you can say that, so.
No, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So never forget that you can play disc golf year round. So
there you go.
Well, guys, folks, that's I'm never forgetting, and it's forgotten, and you didn't realize I just reversed those two, but it's our little quirky segment. Anyway, folks, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for listening to the Newsa-Cast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell a friend, share with a friend. Thank you for listening to another great episode of the Newsa-Cast. We'd really appreciate it if you'd hit up our social pages, subscribe, like, follow, and don't be afraid to engage. Head over to our YouTube channel to get exclusive content like the full interviews and speeches from past Red Smith banquets. Thanks for listening to the Newsa-Cast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and tell a friend. A huge thank you to Diggstown for all the music in today's episode. Catch a gig or find them on Spotify. Help us grow by subscribing wherever you get your pods or sharing the Newsa-Cast. Follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, or Instagram. One of the best ways to help us grow is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Northeastern Wisconsin Sports Advancement is a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to raise money, provide support, and bring greater awareness for youth sports organizations in Northeast Wisconsin. We do this primarily through the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet and the Newsa-Cast. Each year, we give back to the community through 3 initiatives: the Every Kid Plays Grant, the Gives Back Initiative, and scholarships to student athletes.